So during this recent school year, one of my favorite classes I had was creative writing. It was honestly really fun, and I ended up learning a lot about the many different forms of literature, one of those being fan fiction. This fan fiction was something I actually wrote for the class, as it was an assignment. After rereading it and editing it just a little bit, I thought it'd make for an interesting video. The fan fiction was my attempt to make a clearer bridge from the classic series to the X series. With all that being said, I'll begin reading it now. The year is 20XX. Dr. Wily has been defeated by Megaman once again, and for the 11th time, made his getaway at Megaman's expense. Life returned to the status quo, and for a much longer time than anyone expected, as Dr. Wily would never disturb the peace of Earth again, at least, not in his lifetime. Dr. Wily recalled the performance of one of his more recent schemes, and began implementing his ideas from said scheme into his already existing plans for the future. Due to the undisturbed age of peace, Megaman was able to resign from his heroics and fulfill his original role as Dr. Light's dutiful lab assistant, helping the Doctor with his newest project, Project Unlimited. Dr. Light always believed that for robots to truly become the equals to humans such as himself, they needed free will, the ability to think for themselves without the interference of the three laws of robotics. With the sudden onslaughts Wily brought upon the world, there was never enough time to dedicate to the project's completion. While the two doctors could only assume that the other had something in store for the future, they didn't realize that their brilliant rivalry would continue 100 years later. Dr. Wily had long since began working on his own long-term project, Project Zero. He had started production quite some time ago, with no help from Base of course, who made sure Wily knew how he felt about that girly robot. Although Base was Wily's answer to Megaman, he wasn't half the lab assistant Rock was. If Wily didn't begin production after his discovery of Basenium, he wouldn't have the slightest chance of completing the project. Due to Base's lackluster laboratory capabilities and his unwillingness to help, production on Project Zero was slow. On Dr. Light's side of things, thanks to Rock's variable weapon system and assistance from Roll, who kept everything organized for the two, Dr. Light was able to steadily catch up to Wily over the years, first completing the android's head and moving down from there. Rock, who noticed the android's design, asked his father a question. "Doctor, is his armor based off of mine?" "Why, yes it is," Dr. Light proudly responded. "There may be a time when the innocent need protection, and I hope he may serve as their shield. In fact, I haven't told you his name yet, have I?" Dr. Light began to unfold blueprints tucked in his coat pocket. On the paper, next to the schematics, had the name Megaman X in bold letters. The X stands for the infinite potential your brother and successor will have once completed, Dr. Light continued. "Yet, I worry that with infinite potential comes infinite risk," the doctor solemnly added. Looking at his younger brother and future successor, Rock smiled. "Doctor, I think he'll be just fine and do an amazing job," Rock exclaimed. With a smile on his face, Dr. Light gave his son a pat on the back and decided it was time to take a short break. However, the sudden peace didn't come without its sudden consequences. The World Robot Alliance, worried that yet another sudden attack from Wily can happen at any moment, decided to place a ban on all robot masters, citing that their existence in itself left too many possibilities, as nothing was stopping anyone from reprogramming or creating 8 deadly robot masters and turning them against the world, just as Wily has done many times over. During the Robo-Enza incident, even the world's champion, Megaman, was infected, showing that any and all robot masters were a potential threat. Robot masters were gathered and retired on an international scale. Following the ban, a search began to find Dr. Wily's location and his many hideouts, destroying any artificial intelligence that was encountered, confiscating sketches and blueprints of robot masters and the Devil series of designs. However, on a particularly unlucky night for the Doctor, investigators, with the help of locals, were able to identify Wily's current location and began barging in. Thanks to Reggae, Wily was already alerted to the inevitable intrusion. However, what was unexpected was Reggae's and Treble's capture. While Wily urged Base, his strongest and most versatile robot he ever created, to board the escape pod with him, Base refused, as he wouldn't leave Treble behind. In a panic, Wily regrettably left Base behind, while thinking of the futile effort Base was going to make. Although Base had the desire to save Treble by any means necessary, it just wasn't feasible. His programming forbid the use of violence towards humans. At most, he was able to raise his buster and threaten them, yet they were quickly able to call his bluff. After Dr. Wily successfully evaded the public eye, returning to an inconspicuous warehouse where he moved the supplies and the body of Zero, the result of Project Zero, he began to reflect on his relationship with Base, finally realizing the many wrongs he dealt not only to his creation, but his son. He realized the unfair hand he had dealt him, giving him an impossible task of not just rivaling, but defeating Megaman, and how he would exclude Base from his plans, while depriving him of his attention. Due to this revelation, he gains a more fatherly outlook on the incomplete Zero. While Zero was near completion, Wily knew his old age was catching up to him, and had to compromise some of his plant design choices for the sake of having Zero in a completed state. The reason he had returned to his lab was because he needed its resources to complete an AI replica of his mind, alongside creating a dastardly fusion between his ambition and desires, the Robo-Enza virus, and the remaining amount of evil energy he managed to contain. Only a few days later, at the Light residence, there was a knock on the door. As Roll hesitantly reached for the doorknob while Rock stood next to her, Dr. Light put his hand on their shoulder and answered the door. "I assume I already know why you're here, yes?" Dr. Light bluntly asked. "You're here for rock and roll." "That's right, Doctor," the man said, cutting to the chase. "As you clearly already know, robot masters all around the world are being neutralized, and sadly, there are no exceptions. Rock and Roll, who knew their father wouldn't just allow them to be taken without a fight, gave themselves up for their father's sake and safety." With heavy tears all around, Dr. Light hugged his two children for the last time, before watching them walk away with the man. While Dr. Light had made enough progress to complete X, with extra time to create a set of pods, enhancing his abilities if need be, progress on the android would almost screech to a halt due to the loss of his two children and many assistants. However, in due time, Mega Man X would eventually be completed. And that was the end of the story. Reading it for the channel, I gotta say, I don't think I did too bad of a job, but reading the dialogue was a little bit hard, I'm not gonna lie. It may have taken a turn I know some of you may not have expected, and I tried putting in details that called back to certain facts or moments of the franchise, like Base's description of Zero. If you have anything to say about the story, please comment it down below. I had a pretty fun time reading it out loud, other than the dialogue, and would love to hear what you guys think about the story. Thank you so much for listening and staying until the end. Peace.